For 6 months, my 9-year-old son begged me not to make him play outside because the neighbour's kid would terrorise him daily. When I finally approached his mother about it, she laughed and said, maybe your son needs to toughen up. That night, I installed security cameras around our property. What I discovered about her well-behaved child would destroy her reputation as the neighbourhood's perfect parent forever. My name is Michael Harrison, 34 years old, divorced father living in a quiet suburban neighbourhood in Portland, Oregon. I work as a software engineer and have joint custody of my son Danny, who spends every other week with me. Danny is a gentle kid, loves reading, building with Legos, and has never been in trouble at school. He's the kind of child who apologises for accidentally stepping on ants. 6 months ago, I noticed something had changed. Danny used to race outside the moment he arrived at my house, eager to ride his bike or play in the backyard. But suddenly, he started making excuses. I'm tired, Dad. Can we just watch TV? My stomach hurts. At first, I thought it was just a phase. Kids go through them all the time. Our neighbour, Linda Martinez, had moved in next door about a year earlier with her 11-year-old son, Marcus. Linda was one of those parents who never missed an opportunity to brag about her child. At the neighbourhood barbecue last summer, she'd cornered me for 20 minutes talking about Marcus's honour roll status, his leadership skills, how mature he was for his age. Marcus is basically raising himself, she'd said proudly. Teachers constantly tell me they wish they had more students like him. He's going to be something special. Marcus seemed fine enough when I'd see him around the neighbourhood. He'd wave politely, call me Mr. Harrison, and always seemed respectful when Linda was around. But I started noticing that Danny would suddenly find reasons to go inside whenever Marcus appeared in his backyard. The breaking point came on a Thursday evening in March. I was working from home when I heard Danny crying in his room. Not the normal cry of a kid who'd scraped his knee, but deep, hopeless sobs that made my chest tight. I knocked on his door. Danny? What's wrong, buddy? Nothing, he said, but his voice was thick with tears. I sat on his bed. Come on, you can tell me anything. He looked up at me with red, puffy eyes. Dad, can I stay inside for the rest of the week? I don't want to go outside anymore. Why not? You love playing outside. Danny stared at his hands. Marcus says if I go outside, he's going to put bugs in my hair and make me eat dirt. He said he did it to another kid at school, and no one believed the kid when he told. My blood ran cold. How long has this been happening? Since winter, Danny whispered. Every time I go outside, he comes over and says mean things. He threw rocks at me last week when you were at the store. He said if I tell you, he'll make it worse. That night, after Danny fell asleep, I stood at my kitchen window looking at Linda's house. Every light was on, and I could see her moving around, probably cleaning or organising something. She seemed like such a dedicated mother. How could she not know what her son was doing? But then I remembered all the times I'd seen Marcus playing alone in their backyard while Linda was inside. All the times she'd mentioned how independent and self-sufficient he was. Maybe she didn't know because she wasn't paying attention. I decided I needed to talk to her. The next morning, Saturday, I waited until I saw Linda watering her flowers in the front yard. She was wearing a pristine white sundress and had her hair pulled back in a perfect ponytail. Even doing yard work, she looked like she was posing for a magazine cover. Morning, Linda, I called out, walking across our driveways. Oh, hi, Michael. She smiled brightly. Beautiful day, isn't it? I was just thinking how perfect the weather is for kids to be outside playing. Actually, that's what I wanted to talk to you about, I said. I think we might have a small situation with Marcus and Danny. Her smile faltered slightly. Oh? What kind of situation? I chose my words carefully. Danny's been telling me that Marcus has been, well, bothering him when he plays outside. Making threats, throwing things. I'm sure it's just kid stuff, but I thought you should know. Linda's expression shifted from confusion to something that looked almost like amusement. She actually laughed, a light, dismissive sound. Oh, Michael, you know how children are. They exaggerate everything. Marcus is such a gentle soul. He volunteers to help elderly neighbours with their groceries. His teacher calls him a natural leader. I understand that, I said, trying to keep my voice level. But Danny seems genuinely scared. He doesn't want to play outside anymore. Linda set down her watering can and looked at me with what I can only describe as pity. Maybe your son needs to toughen up a little. Boys need to learn how to handle themselves. Marcus is just being, well, a normal boy. Perhaps Danny is a bit too sensitive. The words hit me like a slap. Too sensitive? My child was being terrorized and she was suggesting it was his fault for not being tough enough. I think there might be more to it than that, I said, my voice harder now. Linda picked up her watering can again, clearly dismissing the conversation. Michael, I appreciate your concern, but I know my son. Marcus has never been in trouble a day in his life. Maybe you should focus on teaching Danny how to stand up for himself instead of running to Mommy and Daddy every time another child looks at him wrong. She turned away from me and went back to her flowers, effectively ending the conversation. I stood there for a moment, stunned by her casual cruelty, then walked back to my house. That evening, I told Danny I believed him, and that we were going to handle this situation together. I also made a decision that would change everything. I drove to the electronics store and bought a complete wireless security camera system. Professional grade, motion activated, with night vision capabilities. What are those for, Dad? Danny asked as I unboxed them. Insurance, I said. Sometimes adults need to see things with their own eyes before they believe them. I spent the weekend installing cameras with clear views of both our backyard and the property line, where most of the interaction between the boys would happen. I also installed one that covered our front yard and driveway. The cameras were subtle but comprehensive. Everything would be recorded and stored in the cloud. What I discovered over the next 2 weeks would be far worse than I'd imagined. The first incident I caught on camera happened on a Tuesday afternoon. Danny had been brave enough to ride his bike in our driveway while I worked in the garage nearby. The timestamp showed 4:47 p.m. when Marcus appeared. On the recording, I watched Marcus walk directly up to Danny, who was quietly riding in circles. Marcus grabbed the handlebars, stopping the bike. I told you not to come outside, Marcus said, his voice clear on the audio. Now you're going to pay. He shoved Danny off the bike, hard enough that my son scraped his knee on the concrete. Then Marcus picked up the bike and threw it into our bushes. If you tell your dad, I'm going to sneak into your room at night and put spiders in your bed. Marcus continued. I know which window is yours. I've been watching. Danny was crying, trying to get his bike out of the bushes, when Marcus grabbed a handful of gravel from our decorative border and threw it at him. Several pieces hit Danny in the face. Stop crying like a baby, Marcus said. Next time I'm going to bring my pocket knife. I watched in horror as my son limped inside, leaving his bike in the bushes. I had been in the garage the entire time, not 20 feet away, and I'd heard nothing. Marcus had waited until I'd gone inside to get a tool, But that was just the beginning. Over the next 10 days, the cameras caught Marcus engaging in behaviour that was nothing short of psychological torture. He would throw rocks at our windows when Danny was inside, knowing it would scare him. He killed a bird with a slingshot and left it on our back step. He spray painted "loser" on our fence in small letters, positioned where Danny would see it from his bedroom window. The most disturbing incident happened on a Friday evening. Linda had gone to her book club and Marcus was supposedly doing homework in his room. Instead, he snuck out and came to our yard with a small video camera of his own. "I'm making a movie about weaklings," he announced to our empty backyard, clearly performing for his own camera. "This is where the crybaby lives. Watch this." He proceeded to destroy a small flower garden that Danny had planted the week before, pulling up every single plant and stomping on them. Then he took out a marker and wrote, "Danny is a freak," on our back door in letters large enough to be seen from his bedroom window. "If he tells anyone about this, I'm going to post videos of him crying online," Marcus said to his camera. "Everyone at school will see what a baby he is." But what happened next revealed something even more disturbing about this kid's psychology. As he was walking back to his house, Marcus spotted our elderly neighbour, Mrs. Chen, struggling to bring in her garbage cans. He immediately shifted into a completely different persona. "Mrs. Chen, let me help you with those," he called out cheerfully. I watched in amazement as this child, who had just been terrorizing my son, transformed into the perfect, helpful neighbor boy. He brought in her garbage cans, asked about her day, and even offered to help her with her groceries the next day. "What a sweet boy you are, Marcus," Mrs. Chen said gratefully. "Your mother must be so proud." "I just like helping people," Marcus replied, with what appeared to be genuine sincerity. The moment Mrs. Chen went inside, Marcus's expression changed back to something cold and calculating. He looked directly at one of my cameras and smiled. Not a child's smile, but something that made my blood run cold. He knew the cameras were there, and he didn't care. I called in sick to work the next Monday. I needed time to think, to plan, and to do some investigating. What I'd captured on camera was enough to confront Linda again, but something about Marcus's behaviour patterns suggested this went deeper than simple bullying. I started by calling my sister Janet, who works as a child psychologist. Without giving names or details, I described the behaviours I'd witnessed. "Michael," she said after I finished, "what you're describing sounds like conduct disorder with possible psychopathic traits. This level of manipulation and calculated cruelty in a child this young is extremely concerning. Are the parents aware?" "The mother doesn't believe it," I said. "That's unfortunately common. These children can be very skilled at appearing normal around authority figures. Have you documented everything?" "I have videos." "Good. You need to involve the school and possibly Child Protective Services. This child needs intervention, and the other children around him need protection." That afternoon, I drove to Danny's school and requested a meeting with his teacher and the principal. I brought my laptop and showed them selected clips from the recordings. The principal, Mrs. Rodriguez, watched in stunned silence. "This is Marcus Martinez? We've never had any behavioral issues with him here. He's actually one of our most helpful students." "That's exactly what makes this so concerning," I said. "He's able to compartmentalize his behavior perfectly." The teacher, Mr. Thompson, shook his head. "I've had Marcus in my class for 2 years. He helps other students, turns in assignments early, participates in school clean-up days. This seems like a completely different child. Have there been any incidents with other students that might have been dismissed as normal conflict? I asked. Mr. Thompson and Mrs. Rodriguez exchanged looks. Well, the principal said slowly, there was an incident last month. A younger student claimed Marcus had threatened him in the bathroom, but when we investigated, several other students said the boy was lying. Marcus was very upset that anyone would think he could do such a thing. Let me guess, I said. The other students who vouched for Marcus were his friends. How did you know? I pulled up another video on my laptop, one I hadn't shown them yet. This one was from the camera that covered part of the street. It showed Marcus talking to 3 boys from school, giving them each something from his backpack. I'm betting Marcus has a system, I said. Rewards for loyalty, consequences for snitching. As if on cue, the video showed Marcus pointing toward our house and making a slashing motion across his throat while the other boys laughed. Mrs. Rodriguez was quiet for a long moment. Mr. Harrison, with your permission, I'd like to involve our district psychologist. This needs to be handled very carefully. But I wasn't done investigating. That evening, I did something that might have been questionable, but felt necessary. I set up a long-range directional microphone aimed at the Martinez house. I needed to understand the family dynamics that had created this situation. What I heard over the next 3 days was revealing. Linda spent most of her time on phone calls with friends, bragging about Marcus's achievements and complaining about other parents who couldn't control their children. She rarely had actual conversations with Marcus, mostly just gave him instructions or praise for things like keeping his room clean. But the most telling conversation happened Tuesday night. Linda was on the phone with someone, discussing neighborhood drama. Honestly, I think that man next door has some serious issues, Linda said. He came over here accusing Marcus of bullying his son. Marcus would never hurt a fly. I think he's projecting his own parenting failures onto us. Some people just can't handle raising boys, the voice on the other end said. Exactly. His son is clearly too soft. Boys need to learn how to be tough in this world. If Marcus is teaching him that lesson, maybe the father should be thanking us. I realized that Linda wasn't just ignorant about her son's behavior. She was actively encouraging it. The next morning, I made copies of everything and drove to the police station. Detective Sarah Walsh listened to my story and reviewed the evidence with the measured patience of someone who'd seen too much. This is definitely harassment, she said, and some of these threats could be considered criminal intimidation, even from a minor. The destruction of property is clear, but prosecuting a child this young is complicated. I'm not necessarily looking for prosecution, I said. I want protection for my son and intervention for Marcus before this escalates further. Smart approach. Let me contact Child Protective Services. They'll want to review this immediately. CPS moved faster than I expected. By Thursday, they had scheduled a home visit with the Martinez family. Linda, of course, was outraged. She stormed over to my house that evening, her perfect composure finally cracking. "How dare you involve strangers in our family business?" she screamed from my front porch. "Marcus is being traumatized by investigators because of your lies." I opened my door, holding my laptop. "Linda, I have 6 hours of video footage. Would you like to see what your son has really been doing?" Her face went pale. "You've been spying on us. That's illegal. The cameras are on my property, recording my property and the public areas between our houses. Everything I've captured is completely legal." I showed her 3 minutes of footage. Marcus throwing rocks, destroying Danny's flowers, making threats. Her expression shifted from anger to confusion to something that looked like genuine shock. This can't be Marcus, she whispered. There's more, I said. Hours more, including audio of him threatening to sneak into my house at night with a knife. Linda sank into one of my porch chairs, staring at the laptop screen. But he's such a good boy at home. He gets straight A's. He helps with chores. He's learned to compartmentalize, I said, sitting down beside her. He knows exactly how to behave around adults to avoid consequences. That weekend, the full scope of Marcus's behavior came to light. The CPS investigation expanded to include other families in the neighborhood. It turned out that 3 other children had complained about Marcus to their parents, but the complaints had been dismissed as normal childhood conflicts. Mrs. Chen, our elderly neighbor, revealed that Marcus had been stealing small items from her porch for months, taking packages and mail. She'd assumed it was random teenagers. The school investigation uncovered a pattern of intimidation that had been flying under the radar for over a year. Marcus had been systematically targeting quieter children, always careful to avoid witnesses or adult supervision. The most shocking revelation came from Marcus's own therapist, whom Linda had been taking him to for anxiety issues for the past 6 months. The therapist had been trying to tell Linda that Marcus showed concerning signs of antisocial behavior, but Linda had interpreted the sessions as confirmation that her son was sensitive and misunderstood. 3 weeks later, Linda knocked on my door again. This time she looked exhausted and defeated. "I owe you an apology," she said quietly. I was so invested in believing Marcus was perfect that I couldn't see what was right in front of me. "How is he doing?" I asked. "He's in intensive therapy now. Real therapy, with someone who specializes in conduct disorders. They say it's going to be a long process." She paused. I had no idea how much I was failing him by not getting him proper help. "And how are you doing?" Linda smiled sadly. "Learning to be a real parent instead of just a cheerleader. It's harder than I thought." 6 months later, Danny plays outside again without fear. Marcus is in a different school, getting the specialized attention he needs. Linda and I aren't friends, but we nod to each other when we see each other in the yard. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destruction. Sometimes it's protection. Protecting your child, protecting other children, and maybe even protecting the child who's hurting them from becoming something worse. The cameras are still up, just in case. 2 years have passed since that confrontation with Linda, and I've learned some hard truths about parenting, community, and the responsibility we all share in protecting our children. First, trust your child's instincts. For 6 months, I watched Danny's personality change, saw him retreat from activities he loved, and I almost convinced myself it was just a phase. Children don't lie about being afraid. When your kid stops wanting to play outside, that's not normal childhood behavior. That's a red flag demanding immediate attention. Second, don't be afraid to be the difficult parent. Linda called me paranoid, accused me of projection, suggested my son was too sensitive. I almost backed down because confrontation is uncomfortable. But your child's safety is worth more than neighborhood harmony. I'd rather be seen as overprotective than watch my son suffer in silence. Third, document everything. Without those recordings, this would have been my word against Linda's, with Marcus appearing to be the perfect child to every adult's authority figure. In today's world, proof isn't just helpful, it's essential. Whether it's screenshots, recordings, or written logs, evidence protects both your child and gives authorities the tools they need to act. Fourth, understand that some children are master manipulators. Marcus wasn't just a bully, he was sophisticated enough to maintain completely different personas with different audiences. He knew exactly how to appear helpful and charming to adults while terrorizing children when no one was watching. This isn't rare. These children often excel academically, volunteer for community service, and receive glowing recommendations from teachers who never see their true behavior. Most importantly, recognize that confronting these situations isn't just about your own child. Through our investigation, we discovered Marcus had been targeting multiple children for over a year. By the time everything came to light, we learned that 6 different families had dismissed their children's complaints about Marcus as normal kid drama. How many children suffered because adults didn't take the pattern seriously? The hardest lesson? Sometimes good parents can enable destructive behavior without realizing it. Linda wasn't evil. She was willfully blind. Her identity as a mother was so tied to Marcus being perfect that she couldn't see the reality right in front of her. She chose her own comfort over her child's need for intervention, and that choice hurt both Marcus and his victims. Today, Danny is thriving. He plays outside confidently, has healthy friendships, and most importantly, knows that his father will always believe him and protect him. Marcus is getting the help he needed, though the road has been long and difficult for their family. If you're facing something similar, don't wait. Don't hope it will get better on its own. Don't worry about being dramatic or making waves. Your child is counting on you to be their advocate, their protector, and their voice when they're too scared to speak up. The cameras captured the truth, but the real victory was learning to listen to my son before I needed them.